Hello everyone. Today I'm going to discuss about the probable question that we will see in solution architect examination, and I'll create the link in the description below where you can see these questions, and I'll also attach the link for the Facebook group where you can ask the questions if you have any queries. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, we have a consulting firm repeatedly builds large architecture for their customers using AWS resources from several AWS services including IAM, Amazon EC2, Amazon RDS, DynamoDB, and Amazon VPC. The consultants have architecture diagrams for each of their architecture and are frustrated that they cannot automatically create their resources. Services that will immediately benefit to the organization is AWS CloudFormation. So CloudFormation enables consultant to use their architecture diagrams to construct CloudFormation templates, and it is a service that helps you model and set up your Amazon Web Service resources so that you can spend less time managing those resources and more time focusing on the application that runs on AWS. You can create a template that describes all AWS resources that you want, like Amazon EC2 or Amazon RDS, DB instance, and Amazon CloudFormation takes care of provisioning and configuring those resources for you. So moving to next question, we have an organization hosts a multilingual website on AWS which is served using CloudFront. Languages is specified in HTTP request as below, right? So how should AWS CloudFront be configured to deliver cache data in correct language? So that we can do by using query string parameter. So based on query string parameter, we can configure the cache data in correct language, right? So this is the thing that you should remember when it comes to CloudFront configuration for delivering the cache data, that it should be delivered based on the query string parameters. So moving towards the next question, a solution architect is designing a shared service for hosting containers from several customers on ECS. So ECS is Elastic Container Service. These containers will use several AWS services. A container from one container should not be able to access data from another customer. Which of the below solutions should the architect use to meet this requirement? So that is, create IAM role for tasks, right? With IAM roles for Amazon EC2 tasks, you can specify an IAM role to be used by the containers in a task. Applications are required to sign their AWS API request with AWS credentials, and their feature provides a strategy to manage credentials for your application's use. This is similar to how Amazon EC2 instances profiles provide credentials to EC2 instances. Okay, moving to next question. There is a requirement to host a database on EC2 instance. It is also required that the EBS volume should support 12,000 IOPS. Which Amazon EBS volume type meets the performance requirement? So that is EBS provisioned IOPS SSD. So why provisioned IOPS SSD? Because for high performance and high requirement, as in this case, the ideal choice would be EBS provisioned IOPS SSD, because it is suitable for large database workloads such as MongoDB, Cassandra, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, PostgreSQL, and Oracle. And you should note the volume size, which is 4 GB to 16 TB, right? and maximum IOPS volume is 32,000 and the processing data is 500 MB per second. So we have another thing called general purpose SSD, which is known as GP2. So we use that when there is scenario like which is recommended for most widely variety of workloads: system boot volumes, virtual desktops, low latency interactive apps, development and test environment, right? These things are the keyword that you need to consider to choose the general purpose SSD. That is, it supports a wide variety of workloads, right? And system boot volumes, virtual desktops, low latency interactive apps, and it is suitable for development and test environment, right? And the volume size is 1 GB to 16 TB, and the maximum IOPS per volume is 10,000 and the processing data is 160 MB per second, right? Now moving to next question. Development teams in your organization use S3 buckets to store log files for various applications hosted in AWS development environment. The developers intend to keep the logs for a month for troubleshooting purposes and subsequently purge the logs. What feature will enable this requirement? So for this feature you need to configure the lifecycle rules on S3 bucket, right? So next question. A legacy application needs a proprietary file system. Which of the following can be used to store data accessible by an EC2 instance? So we need a proprietary file system. So in this case we have AWS EFS, right, Elastic File System, which provides simple scalable file storage for use with Amazon EC2 instance in AWS cloud. Amazon EFS is easy to use and offers a simple interface that allows you to create and configure file systems quickly and easily. With EFS, storage capacity is elastic, growing and shrinking automatically as you add and remove files, so your application have the storage they need when they want it, right? So when mounted on Amazon EC2 instances, an EFS file system provides a standard file system interface and file system access semantics, allowing you to seamlessly integrate EFS with your existing application and tools. Multiple Amazon EC2 instances can access and Amazon Elastic File System at the same time, right? So moving to next question. What option can be used to host application that uses NGINX and is scalable at any point of time? So that is Amazon EC2 and Elastic Beanstalk. So NGINX is a open source software for web serving, reverse proxying, caching, load balancing, etc. And NGINX can be hosted on EC2 instance through a series of clear steps. So that is launch an EC2 instance through the console, SSH into the instance and use the command yum install -y NGINX to install NGINX. Also make sure that it is configured to start automatically after a reboot. It can also be installed with Elastic Beanstalk services. So that's the next thing which it can be installed with. To enable NGINX proxy server with your Tomcat application, you must add configuration file .ebe extensions in the application source bundle that you upload your Elastic Beanstalk. So moving to next question. We have 1 million images are required to be uploaded to S3. What option ensures optimal performance in this case? So that is to use hexadecimal hash for the prefix, right? So this is because if you have number of folders, it creates a good identifier, right? You should add hexadecimal hash for the prefix. So one way to one way to introduce the randomness to the key names is to add a hash string as prefix to the key name, right? So we have next question. There is a requirement to get the IP address for resources accessed in a private subnet. Which of the following can be used to fulfill this purpose? So that is VPC flow logs, right? VPC flow logs is a feature that enables you to capture your information about IP traffic going to and from network interfaces in your VPC. So moving to next question. A database is required for a two-tier application. The data would go through multiple schema changes. The database needs to be durable, and changes to the database should not result in database downtime. Which of the following is best option for downtime? So in this case we have Amazon Aurora. So we have next question, that is a Redshift cluster currently contains 60 terabyte of data. There is a requirement that a disaster recovery site is put in place in region located 600 km away. Which of the following solution would help ensure that this requirement is fulfilled? So you can do that by enabling the cross region snapshot for Redshift cluster, right? So moving to next question. A company is using a Redshift cluster to use their data warehouse. There is a requirement from the initial IT security team to encrypt data for Redshift database. How can this be achieved? You can achieve this by using AWS KMS custom default master key. Amazon Redshift uses a hierarchy of encryption keys to encrypt the database. You can use either AWS Key Service KMS or Hardware Security Module HSM. So I have listed here KMS, but this is also the option, right? You can use Hardware Security Module too to manage the top level encryption key in the hierarchy. Okay. So for the next question, there is the requirement for block level storage to store 500 GB of data. Data encryption is also required. Which of the following can be used in such case? So you will use AWS EBS volumes. AWS EBS is a block level storage, right? We have this question here, block level storage. So most of the questions you should pick the key terms, right, to select the answers, like EFS when it talks about file storage, right? So you need to consider those things. So moving to next question. An application requires an EC2 instance for continuous batch processing activities requiring a minimum throughput of 500 MB per second. Which of the following is the best option for this? So it's throughput optimized. Why? EBS throughput optimized SSD ST1 is low cost HDD volume designed for frequently accessed throughput intensive workloads, right? For it says for batch processing activities with minimum throughput, right? So this is the scenario that fits the question. So throughput optimized is used for streaming, for big data, for data warehouse, for log processes, right? And the volume size is 500 GIB to 16 TIB, and the maximum IOPS per volume is 500, and the processing data is 500 MB per second. And we have cold SSD, which is for infrequent data. So on the other hand is the lowest SSD volume designed for less frequently accessed workloads. The volume size is 500 GIB to 16 TIB, and the max IOPS per volume is 250, and the processing data is 250 MB per second, right? So moving to next question. An application needs to access data in another AWS account in same region. Which of the following can be used to ensure that the data can be accessed as required. So we can do that by using the VPC pairing for both accounts. So what is VPC pairing? VPC pairing connection is a network connection between two VPCs that enables you to route traffic between them privately. Instances in either VPC can communicate with each other as if they are within the same network. You can create a VPC pairing connection between your VPCs with a VPC in another AWS account or with a VPC in different AWS region, right? So moving to next question. So this is the most important section, right? You can create a VPC in another account or in different region, right? So moving to next question, we have an application that consists of following architecture. The architecture is an EC2 instance in multiple availability zone behind the elastic load balancer. The EC2 instance are launched via an auto scaling group. There is a NAT instance which is used so that instances can download updates from the internet. Which of the following is the bottleneck of the architecture? So in this case, the bottleneck of the architecture is NAT instance. Since there is only one NAT instance, there is a bottleneck for the architecture. For high availability, launch NAT instances in multiple availability zone, right? So if you want high availability, you can launch NAT instance in multiple availability zone and make it as a part of auto scaling group, right? So moving to next question, there is a requirement to host a database application having a lot of resource intensive reads and writes. Which of the following is the best storage option to ensure the data is persistent? So it's EBS provisioned IOPS, right? Because we have a lot of intensive reads and writes as we discussed above. So for this kind of scenario, we need EBS provisioned IOPS. And so moving to next question, an application send images to S3. The metadata for these images needs to be saved in persistent storage and is required to be indexed. Which of the following can be used for the underlying metadata storage? So that is AWS DynamoDB. The Amazon DynamoDB is the most efficient storage mechanism for just storing metadata in DynamoDB. DynamoDB is normally used in conjunction with S3. So after storing images in S3, you can store their metadata in DynamoDB. You can also create the secondary indexes for DynamoDB tables, right? So you need to take some keywords like for index, right? When you want indexes and store in conjunction with S3, so the scenario, when such scenario comes in exam, the suitable option will always be DynamoDB. So moving to next question, an application hosted on EC2 instances has its promotional campaign due to start in 2 weeks. There is a mandate from the management to ensure that no performance problems are encountered due to traffic growth during this time. Which of the following must be done to the auto scaling group to ensure this requirement is fulfilled? So for this, configure dynamic scaling and use target tracking scaling policy. If scaling is based on metric, which is an utilization metric that increases or decreases proportionally to the number of instances in auto scaling group, it's recommended to use the target tracking policy instead. So when you will use target tracking policy, if you have the number of instances in auto scaling group which can increase or decrease proportionally, right? And we use the scheduled scaling in, see here, scheduled scaling is not good for this scenario because you cannot predict the load changes and how long you need to run, right? Here you cannot predict the load changes and how long you need to predict how long you need to run, and in this question we are not sure about the actual traffic. We only know that there will be heavy traffic and we don't have any history to predict it either. Okay, moving to next question, we have currently a company makes use of EBS snapshot to back up their EBS volumes as a part of as a part of the business continuity requirement. These snapshots need to be made available in another region. How can this be achieved? So this can be achieved by creating a snapshot and copy the snapshot to new region, right? So next question, a company has an application hosted in AWS. This application consists of EC2 instances which sit behind an elastic load balancer with EC2 instances. The following are the requirement from an administrative perspective. So what is the requirement? Requirement is to ensure notifications are sent when the read requests go behind 1000 requests per minute. Ensure notifications are sent when the latency goes behind 10 seconds. Any API activity which calls for sensitive data should be monitored. Which of the following can be used to satisfy these requirements? So for that you need to use CloudTrail to monitor the API activity. So whenever you need the API activity, right, you need the CloudTrail, right, because it is the tool which monitors the API activity. And you can use CloudWatch matrices for matrices that needs to be monitored as per the requirement, and set up an alarm activity to send out notification when the matrix reaches the set threshold limit, right? So moving to next question, there is a requirement for an ISCSI device and the legal application needs local storage. Which of the following can use to meet the demands of the application? So that is configure storage gateway stored volumes, right? So storage gateway stored volumes is the best option for this kind of scenarios. In cached mode your primary data is returned to S3 while retaining your frequently accessed data locally in cache for low latency accessed. But in stored mode, your primary data is stored locally and your entire database is available for low latency access while asynchronously backed up to AWS. So here we are not using cached mode. The option might come like configure storage cached volumes too, but we'll not use the cached mode because we are not retaining the frequently accessed data locally, right? So we need the storage gateway stored volumes for this kind of scenario. So moving to next question, there is a requirement for EC2 instance in private subnet to access an Amazon S3 bucket. It is required that the traffic does not traverse to the internet. Which of the following can help fulfill this requirement? So that is VPC endpoint. A VPC endpoint enables you to privately connect your VPC to supported AWS and VPC endpoint services powered by private link without requiring an internet gateway, NAT device, VPN connection or AWS direct connection. Instances in your VPC do not require public IP address to communicate with resources in the service, right? So for this scenario you need to use VPC endpoint. So moving to next question, there is a website hosting in AWS that might get a lot of traffic over the next couple of weeks. If the application faces the disaster, Which of the following can be used to reduce potential disruption to users in case of issues? Is to use Route 53 to route static website. In disaster recovery scenario, the best choice out of all given options is to divert the traffic to the static website, right? So moving to the next question, a database hosted using the AWS RDS service is getting a lot of database queries and has now become a bottleneck for the associating application. What action will ensure that the database is not a performance bottleneck? So for this, you can set up Elasticache in front of the database. Elasticache is an in-memory solution which can be used in front of database to cache the common queries used against database. This can reduce the overall load on the database. So moving to next question, you require the ability to analyze a customer's click stream data on a website so they can do behavioral analysis. Your customer needs to know what sequence of pages and ads their customer clicked on. This data will be used in real time to modify the web page's layout as customer click through the site to increase the stickiness and advertising click-through. Which option meets the requirement for captioning and analyzing this data? So for this scenario, you need to push web clicks by session to Amazon Kinesis and analyze behavior using Kinesis workers, right? So this real time is the main keyword which you need to think about Kinesis. And for this scenario, you need to push web clicks by session to Amazon Kinesis and analyze behavior using Kinesis workers, right? So Kinesis data streams can continuously capture and store terabytes of data per hour from hundreds of thousands of sources such as website click streams, financial transactions, social media feeds, IT logs, and location tracking events, right? So moving to next question. A company has an infrastructure that consists of machines which keep sending log information every 5 minutes. The number of these machines can run into thousands, and it is required to ensure that the data can be analyzed at a later stage. Which of the following would help to fulfill this requirement? In this requirement, you need to use Amazon Kinesis Firehose with S3, right? So use Amazon Kinesis Firehose with S3 to take log files and store them in S3 for further processing. Kinesis Firehose helps capture, transform, and load streaming data into S3, Redshift, Elasticsearch service, and Splunk. So moving to next question, a company is planning to use Docker containers and necessary container orchestration tools for their batch processing requirements. There is a requirement for batch processing for both critical and non-critical data. Which of the following is the best implementation step for this requirement to ensure that cost is effectively managed? So for this requirement, you need to use ECS for container orchestration and a combination of spot and reserved instances for the underlying instances, right? So the ECS, the container orchestration, the Elastic Container Service from AWS can be used for container orchestration. Since there are both critical and non-critical loads, one can use spot instances for non-critical workloads for ensuring cost which is kept minimum, right? So moving towards next question, a company hosts 5 web servers in AWS. They want to ensure that Route 53 can be used to route users' traffic to random web servers when they request for the underlying web application. Which routing policy should be used to fulfill this requirement? So you should use multi-value answer. Okay, if you want to route traffic appropriately randomly to multiple resources such as web servers, you can create one multi-value answer record for each resources and optionally associate with an Amazon Route 53 health check, right? So for this scenario, the answer is multi-value answer, right? Okay, moving to our next question. A customer wants to create a stream of EBS volumes in AWS. The data of the volume is required to be encrypted at rest. How can this be achieved? This can be achieved by using KMS to generate encryption keys, which can be used to encrypt the volumes, right? So moving to next question. A company has a requirement to store 100 terabyte of data to AWS. The data will be exported using AWS Snowball and needs to then reside in a database layer. The database should have the faculty to be queried from a business intelligence application. Each time is roughly 500 KB size. Which of the following is an ideal storage mechanism for the underlying data layer? So in this case, the ideal solution is Amazon Redshift. Amazon Redshift is a fully managed petabyte scale data warehouse service in the cloud. You can start with just a few hundred GB of data and scale to petabyte or more. This enables you to use the data to acquire new insight for your business and customers. The first step is to create a data warehouse. To launch a set of nodes called an Amazon Redshift cluster. After you provision your cluster, you can upload your dataset and then perform data analysis queries. Regardless of the size of the datasets, Amazon Redshift offers fast query performance using the same SQL-based and business intelligence application that you use today. So why DynamoDB, RDS and Amazon Aurora are not the suitable option? Because DynamoDB is not a better option for the above scenario because the maximum item size in DynamoDB is 400 KB and here we have 100 terabyte and item is 500 KB, but we have the limit of 400 KB, so it's nearly 100 KB more in size, right? So the DynamoDB is definitely not the good option. And talking about RDS is not the better option because with RDS we can create MySQL, MariaDB, SQL Server, PostgreSQL and Oracle RDS DB instance with up to 16 TB of storage, right? 16 TB is nearly like 16 terabyte. So but the scenario, right, we have for the storage we have 100 terabyte, right? So definitely that is also not the better option. Talking about the Amazon Aurora is not a better option because Aurora supports 64 terabyte of data. See, we have only 64 terabyte, but we have here 100 terabyte. So only Redshift is the good option, right? So moving to next question. Your company currently has a set of EC2 instance hosted in AWS. The states of these instances needs to be monitored and each stage needs to be recorded. Which of the following can help fulfill this requirement? So you need to use CloudWatch events to monitor the state change of the events and use AWS Lambda to store a change record in DynamoDB table, right? So moving towards next question. A company has set up an application in AWS that interacts with DynamoDB. It is required that when an item is modified in a DynamoDB table, an immediate entry is made to the associating application. How can this be accomplished? So this can be accomplished by using DynamoDB streams to monitor the changes to the DynamoDB table. Trigger a Lambda function to make an associated entry in an application as soon as the DynamoDB streams are modified. So a DynamoDB stream is an ordered flow of information about changes to items in DynamoDB table. When you enable streams on table, DynamoDB captures information about every modification to data items in the table. For example, consider a mobile gaming app that writes to score table, right? Whenever the top score of the score table is updated, a corresponding stream record is written to the table's stream. This event could trigger a Lambda function that posts a configuration message on a social media network handle, right? So moving to next question. An application currently uses AWS RDS MySQL as its data layer. Due to recent performance issues on the database, it has been decided to separate the querying part of the application by setting up a separate reporting layer. Which of the following additional steps could you potentially assist in improving the performance of the underlying database? So for this scenario, you need to make use of read replica to set up a secondary read-only database. Amazon RDS read replica provide enhanced performance and durability for the database instances. This feature makes it easy to elastically scale out beyond the capacity constraint of a single DB instance for read-heavy database workloads. You can create one or more replicas of a given source DB instance and serve high-volume application read traffic from multiple copies of your data, thereby increasing aggregate read throughput. Now moving to next question. A company is asking its developer to store application logs in S3 bucket. These logs are only required for a temporary period of time, after which they can be deleted. Which of the following steps can be used to effectively manage this? So you should use S3 lifecycle policies to manage the deletion, right? So moving to next question. An application running on EC2 instance processes sensitive information stored in Amazon S3. This information is accessed over the internet. The security team is concerned that the internet connectivity to Amazon S3 could be the security risk, right? Which solution will resolve the security concern? Is to access the data through a VPC endpoint for Amazon S3. So a VPC endpoint, as we discussed earlier, enables you to privately connect your VPC to supported AWS services and VPC endpoint services powered by private link without requiring an internet gateway, NAT device, VPN connections, or AWS Direct Connect connection. Instances in your VPC do not require public IP to communicate with resources in the service. Okay, you have set up the Redshift cluster. So that's next question. You have set up the Redshift cluster in Amazon Web Service and you are trying to access it, but you are unable to do so. What should be done so that you can access Redshift cluster? So you should change the security group of the Redshift cluster. When you provision an Amazon Redshift cluster, it is locked down by default, so nobody can access it. To grant other users inbound access to Amazon Redshift cluster, you associate the cluster with the security group. So moving to next question. you have a web application hosted on EC2 instances in which you have a web application hosted on EC2 instances in AWS which is being accessed by user across the globe. The operation team has been receiving support requests about extreme slowness from users in some regions. What can be done to the architecture to improve the response time of these users is to place the EC2 instance behind CloudFront, right? Amazon CloudFront is a web service that speeds up distribution of your static and dynamic web content such as .html, .css or .js and images file to your users. CloudFront delivers your content through a worldwide network of data centers called edge locations. So that's it for part 2. So I'll continue the part 3 and you can check my channel to look the videos. So I have created the sections of the practice questions for AWS solution architect examinations, and I have also shared the link, and feel free to go to us the link and check if you want to read out the material by yourself. And I have also included a link of the Facebook group where you can ask questions, and there will be someone who is expert in AWS to answer your questions as well. Okay, thank you very much. See you in next lab.